Good afternoon. My name is Sandra Foster, and welcome to the discussion on discovering the servant leader in you. My hope for you today is that once you finish the presentation, that you will have a better understanding of what servant leadership is, as well as what social justice is and advocacy, and how all three areas can work together to help you discover the servant leader in you. So with that, let's get started. Okay, so let's get started. So you've heard the term servant leadership a lot throughout this summit. So you may be thinking, what is servant leadership? It may sound pretty simple, servant leadership. So I want you to think about that for a second. What do you think, or what comes to mind when you think of the word leadership or leader? And what comes to mind when you think of servant or serving? Sometimes it may seem a little contradictory because when we think of leadership, we think about someone at the top, someone who is over everyone else, making the rules, telling people what to do, all those types of things. And then when you think of serving or servant, you don't typically think about someone being at the top or being over anyone or a group of people or a project or anything like that. But the fact is, the best way to be a leader and the most effective way to be a leader is to be someone who knows how to serve others. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in the presentation. But first, I wanted to give you some background about the term servant leadership. It was created in 1970 by a gentleman named Robert K. Greenleaf. And I want to say this, if you're interested in learning more about servant leadership, there's a lot of information on the internet. You can just Google servant leadership and you'll come up with a lot of cool information. And so the concept behind servant leadership is that in order to lead, one must be willing to serve first. And so remember I said a few minutes ago, a lot of people, when they think of leadership, they don't think about serving and helping others. Because when you're the leader, you're the top person. But through serving others, an individual can gain better understanding of the needs and concerns of others. So it deals with empathy, which we'll talk about a little bit later as well. And often servant leaders gain the respect of those following them and will frequently inspire others to develop and utilize their leadership abilities as well. So in a nutshell, that's basically what servant leadership is. It's a leader who is willing to serve first, get to know others that they're working with, get a better understanding of what they're dealing with. And then by doing that, you're more effective in helping them and leading them through different projects, situations, issues, and so forth. So with that, we're going to go ahead and move forward and talk about some of the characteristics or qualities of being a servant leader. So now that we've talked about what servant leadership is, I want to focus on a few of the servant leadership themes that are listed here on the PowerPoint slide. In particular, values and integrity, empathy, and awareness. And so values and integrity are pretty simple. What do you believe in? What's important to you? How do you act under certain situations? If someone makes you angry, do you automatically lash back out or snap out on them? Or do you take the time to calm yourself down before you respond back to them? As far as values, what's important to you? Do you believe that getting good grades are important in order to be successful in school? And so if you do that, then things such as going to class, listening to your teachers, completing your assignments, making sure that they are as correct as possible, and asking for help when necessary are all components of making sure that that value of getting a good education or getting good grades is achieved. The next theme I want to talk about is empathy, putting yourself in another person's shoes. A lot of times that's kind of hard to do if you've never had to experience certain situations. But a part of being a good leader, and especially a servant leader, is learning to kind of feel what other people are feeling. Put yourself in the standpoint of how would I feel if I were in their situation. And a lot of times when you start to do that, you find yourself becoming more compassionate and nice towards people, not being so quick to be judgmental towards them, because you can imagine what it feels like, and you wouldn't want to feel that same way. You wouldn't want people making fun of you or talking behind your back about you and so forth. So that's what empathy is, putting yourself in another person's shoes. And the last theme I want to focus on for today's presentation is awareness. Knowing what's going on around you and what's going on inside of you. What are the issues or problems that you may see on TV or you may see in your community that kind of get you upset, or you say things like, I wish there's something I wish there was something that I can do to help with that situation, or I wish it was something that I can do to help that person as they're going through some tough times. And so with that, I want to use that concept of awareness to transition into the next part of the presentation that deals with social justice. What is social justice? I'm sure many of you all have heard this term on TV, on social media. You may have talked about it in school, and some of you may be wondering, what exactly is social justice? And there are a lot of terms out there, or a lot of definitions about what social justice is. What I tried to do is make it as simple as possible to get the basic elements of what social justice is. And that is the point that everyone should be entitled to the same basic human rights and freedoms. And we'll talk about some of those basic human rights in the next couple of slides. So I want you to think about something. What are some basic human rights that are important to you? That you feel like just because you are a human being, you have rights to those things, or you should be able to enjoy some of those freedoms, in life. And so whatever those rights are, think about it from the standpoint that just like you feel like you should have rights to certain things, there are others that should have those same rights as you. And so it kind of goes back to the concept of treating others how you would like to be treated. Treating others with respect, dignity, and so forth. So that is really the basic element of what social justice is. Like I said, in the next couple of slides, we'll talk about some of those examples, but I wanted you to get an understanding of what the concept is. At the heart of social justice is the concepts of equality and equity. So as you see here, this picture, you may have seen it on social media. I've seen it a lot on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And so it gives a diagram or a visual representation of what equality is versus what equity is. And so if you look on the left, you're looking at the concept of equality. Equality equals sameness. So as you see, they're trying to watch the baseball game, and as you can see, they're different heights. And so, but you can tell that even though they're all standing on one box each, not everyone can see the game. So even though they're starting at the same place, the person on the right, because they're short, they still can't see the game, even though they're standing on the same number of boxes as everyone else. So in order to fully embrace equality, you have to make sure that everyone is starting from the same place. So again, equality equals sameness. Let's take a look at the picture on the right. That is a representation of equity. Equity means fairness or equals fairness. Access to the same opportunities. So as you can see, before on the left-hand side, everyone was standing on one box. So even though they were all standing on the same number of boxes, not everyone could see the game. But with equity, what happens is that because the person on the left is tall or the tallest, he doesn't need the boxes to see the game. He can still see the game. Yet the person on the right-hand side, they needed 2 extra boxes, but now they can see the game too. So equity means having access to the same opportunity. So now that things have been shifted around where the person on the right, the shortest person, has some extra boxes given to them so that they can stand up and see the game just like everyone else, now everyone is at the same level. Everyone can enjoy the game at the same time. So that's really a diagram of what equality is versus equity. Both are important to social justice. Both are important to making sure that as a servant leader, you help those in your community. But in order to make sure that equality is effective, you have to make sure that everyone has access to the same opportunities or the same resources. Now that we talked a little bit about what servant leadership is, as well as some of the characteristics and how it can tie together with social justice, which again, the essence of social justice being that individuals should have access or should have the right to basic human rights and resources. Let's talk about some examples of basic human rights. If you look here on the PowerPoint, you'll see housing, food, education, healthcare. So I'll go over each of them pretty quickly. You may already know some examples. So for housing, just having access to adequate clean housing in safe neighborhoods where you may feel safe to go outside, or you can walk down the street or ride your bike or anything like that. Having access to food. A lot of people don't have access to food because they're not working, or they may live in an area where the nearest grocery store is miles away. But if they don't have transportation, if they don't have a car, or they don't have access to public transportation, it can be very difficult for them to go and get the food that they need. Or they may not have access to resources such as food pantries or churches or other organizations that may give out food. As far as education, basic human rights with education, just having the right to quality education. Some students, some children live in communities where schools don't have books, or they don't have access to computers, or they may have 40, 50 children in the classroom, whereas another school may have access to the best technology out there, or they may have, a classroom of 12, 13 students so they can get better attention from their teachers. And as far as healthcare, being able to go to the doctor when you're sick. There are a lot of people out there who can't go to the doctor because they don't have health insurance, or they don't have enough health insurance to cover their needs. So those are just some examples of basic human rights that, as individuals, everyone should have access to. Again, have equal access to, if at all possible, which is more equity versus equality. And so if you can think of any other resources or any other examples of human rights, feel free to drop them in the comment section below. Now, at this point, some of you may be thinking, well, this sounds all well and good, but what does servant leadership have to do with me? Why is it important that I know about servant leadership? Why is it important for me to develop leadership skills or know what social justice is and how it relates to human rights? Well, I would like to say that it means a lot. It's very important because, as you've seen in videos throughout the summit, there are a lot of people your age who are making a big impact in their community by leading through service or servant leadership. And one of the main ways that they do that is through advocacy, which is the act of pleading or arguing in favor of something, such as a cause, idea, or policy. So basically what advocacy is knowing how to speak up and be willing to speak up on behalf of others regarding a particular issue, a particular cause, or policy. And so we're going to talk about what an advocate does and how you can be an advocate and serve in action. So I've learned that the best way to be an effective servant leader is to be an effective advocate. And what better way to do that than to put servant leadership and social justice in action? So what I've done here on this slide is create a short list of different opportunities that you can implement in your community to put what you've learned to practice in order to help develop the servant leader in you. Now, by no means is this a full list, and if you have any other ideas, feel free to drop them in the comment section and share with your fellow participants. Some of them can include organizing a food, clothing, or toy drive with a local nonprofit. Nonprofit or community organizations are located throughout the country, and so wherever you're watching from, if you want to connect with a local organization, feel free to reach out to them. They love working with young people, and this is a wonderful way to develop your skills and your talents. It looks good on your resume, and it may help put you on a career path to what you want to do when you get older. We here at Reasonable Service love working with youth, so if you're in the Tampa, Florida area or Decatur, Illinois area, please reach out to us. We always have opportunities to work, and we would love to partner with you. Another opportunity or a way that you can put service, leadership, and social justice in action is to volunteer at an animal shelter. A lot of people love working with animals. Same thing, things may be a little different because of COVID-19, but again, I highly encourage you to reach out to your local shelters to see if there are any opportunities there. For those of you all who are more interested in writing or political campaigns, or are interested in advocacy from that standpoint, feel free to write letters to your elected officials expressing views on current issues. You have the right to do that as well. Again, it doesn't matter how young you are. If you live in a community, you have things and issues that you feel strongly about, let them know. They want to know. They want to hear from young people about how they feel about what's going on in their community. Educate and encourage your peers to get involved in social justice issues. Now, with that, I would always say be careful. Make sure you're making a positive impact and it doesn't hurt yourself or it doesn't hurt others around you. So I want to make sure I put that out there. Also, create videos or TikToks or whatever media that you use or social platform that you use to bring awareness to issues that are important to you. Again, make sure that it is positive because you want to put out a good message to help others in your community. If you have any other ideas, feel free to drop them in the comment below. But again, this is just an overview of some ways that you can put what you've learned today into action. And with that, we've reached the end of the presentation. I hope you enjoyed learning about servant leadership, social justice, and advocacy, and how all three areas can work together to help you discover the servant leader in you. I will leave you with some links here about servant leadership, as well as some social justice issues that you can take a look at and discover ways that you can help make a difference in your community. Thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of your day.